As part of his advocacy for good governance and a stable political economy, Vanguard Newspapers Media Group hosted the 2022 edition of its Economic Discourse, which focused on the theme National Plans and National Performance, Gaps, Learnings and Opportunities. It had as keynote speaker Professor Akpan, Chairman, Foundation for Economic Research and Training, who emphasized the importance of sustainable economic planning in Nigeria.
All economies have development plans, all, including the United States, short-term and long-term, to ensure sustained economic growth and development. A strategic thinking government will ensure that its plan is properly implemented. In Nigeria, the leadership, bureaucrats and technocrats have conceptualized, formulated and implemented various economic plans with inherent programs and policies with the objective of fast-tracking development. Yet, the outcomes are nothing to write home about. Why? Is it due to the governance and leadership style? It is on record that both the military and the civilians have governed for 30 years each, if I'm correct, with various plans and programs to improve the standard of living of its citizens. So, economic planning is a deliberate government attempt to coordinate economic decision-making over the long term and to influence, direct, and in some cases, control the level and growth of a nation's economic variables, such as income, consumption, employment, investment, exports, imports, population, among others. Now, what's the rationale for planning? Why do economists plan? I would state several reasons. One is market failure. Okay? The markets we all believe in and see sacrosanct. Usually not the case. The market does not always function properly. And in some cases may not even exist. And also markets may produce undesirable outcomes as measured by social objectives. Second, government failure. Politicians and bureaucrats put their priority first rather than the public interest. Weak institutions, corruption, rent-seeking, bribery. Thirdly, resource mobilization and allocation. The economy must mobilize resources for development. Fourthly, attitudinal or psychological impact. The need for foreign aid or donor money. The need for balanced development of all areas of the country. And then fast-tracking growth and development. But the market by definition may be slow. So in essence, the major objective of planning is to enhance economic growth at least double digits. And that brings to the issue of growth and development. All growth is inclusive. It is because countries were growing, yet no development. The World Bank and the IMF, because they have the resources, push out this nebulous term called inclusive growth. What is important is that growth should be sustained for at least 15, 20 years to have a dent on poverty reduction. You cannot develop without growing. So growth is only a necessary condition for development. Development involves changes in GDP over a long period of time that is sustainable, plus structural changes and other important matters that I've mentioned. What is happening to the quality of your education? What is happening to employment? Happening to poverty, and so on and so forth. If you don't have good governance, your development plan, no matter how it is articulated, it will go nowhere. It will even have problems in terms of implementation. It is good governance that will ensure that national development plans are effectively and efficiently implemented. Good governance and the satisfactory performance of an economy are organically linked. Learning from the failure of past development plans The present National Development Plan, 2021 to 2025, must be subjected to properly monitoring and evaluation during the execution.
The chairman of the occasion, Mr. Atedo Peterside, founder and pioneer CEO of Stanbic IBTC, harped on the need for an enabling policy environment and level playing field for businesses in the country.
What were we doing for 15 years plus that we suddenly no longer knew how to do? And don't put your mind and think that it's because the world has changed, so growth has become more difficult for everybody since 2015, because that is not true. Since 2015, several African countries around and about us have been growing rapidly. Some of them learned the lessons of what we were doing right before 2014 and are growing very fast. We are among those who are now the laggards who stopped growing. So what changed? Let me just use figures things that everybody knows. We were growing very fast after the military government left. The rapid growth began about a full year after Obasanjo came in. It's not because Obasanjo did anything wonderful. There was a sea change in the mood. We had gotten rid of military government. Everybody was optimistic. Nigeria is now democratic. Democratic dividend. Growth is going to be unleashed. Everybody is buoyant. So there was a sea change in enthusiasm. That led to investors coming in, rushing in, Nigerians, foreigners, everybody alike thinking, wow, have you heard? Nigeria has gotten rid of the military. So if you go and look at data, the investment to GDP ratio, see, growth comes from investment. If people don't make any investment, there will be no growth. The investment to GDP ratio, shortly after we got rid of the military, was as high as 35%. So which meant that everybody was investing for whatever reason. Of course, growth then followed. But from that time to now, the investment to GDP ratio has been sliding. So, but now it's at about 15%. If you're at about 15%, it means that the investment activity is so small that there cannot be that much growth. Go and listen to Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. It's a 1-minute video. He said the first thing you need before an economy can grow is a level playing field. Who wants to come and operate in a rigged economy? This economy is rigged. It's rigged in favor of a handful of people. So when they say that there's investment, yes, by a handful of people only. Everybody else has stopped investing. So those are some of the simple things we need to correct. And until and unless we correct them, we're going nowhere.
Panelists drawn from various sectors of the economy, government, and the organized labor provided their perspectives on the execution of an inclusive National Development Plan, especially the current one, 2021 to 2025.
National Development Plan Implementation Unit is being set up, and it is in the plan also approved. And the framework is going to involve private sector, public sector, non-government actors, community-based organizations, so that it will be participatory, it will be inclusive, and Nigerians will be able to ask questions at each stage of the implementation.
Can you let us drill down a bit and just talk about issues around inclusive jobs-led and poverty reduction targets in the plan and how this can be achieved?
Economic policy must all be simultaneously reviewed to create a private sector-led mood or environment. That has several imperatives. One is level playing field, both in monetary, fiscal, in fact, across all economic policy. And I think Mr. Atedo has pointed to that. Second is predictable regulatory behavior. And I think Prof nicely carried that issue. Where regulatory behavior is schizophrenic, it's almost responding to who I'm looking at. You create an environment where no one wants to come. So in the cascade of the implementation, we're now discussing the implementation of that, we must see policymakers do what they need to do. I mean, what we are expecting at this time of the day in the cabinet is not people running for presidency. They want to run, they should resign. Okay? Because what we expect from those in the cabinet in the last year of an administration that started a plan last year is finish updating the policies to align to the development plan. And it has to happen now, not later, synchronously across government. Once we have done that, you have now set the environment within which we can now discuss an energetic executive that can finish.
Having spent so much time advocating for the financial markets role in terms of development, what is your take? Having listened to the presentations you've had, but most importantly for me, I like this particular quote by the chairman, that investors do not have a level playing field. And if we do not address that, every other thing we're building is like it's skewed against success, as it were. What is your take generally on the issue of plans and performance, Mr. Chukwu?
When we talk of attracting investment to the economy, you must also define which sectors you have competitive advantage, which sectors you have the interlinkages that will attract investors to come into the economy. And one of the greatest challenges we have in our own national planning is that we have not defined how we want to position the economy. If you look at previous plans, the government keep mounting, we want to be a private sector-led economy. But the question still remains, what have we done to be a private sector-led economy? If we want to be a private sector-led economy, the first thing you have to look at the structure of your economy, what we call basic economy, is your SWOT analysis. Our basic SWOT analysis shows that we have a large population, a youthful population, which means we have a market in terms of consumer market. We have a labor force that has to be developed. If you want to recognize your own uniqueness as a country, you must define an overarching economic policy, which will, for instance, a country like our will say, we want to be a productive economy. We have made allusion to that, which is what China has done, which is what India has done. Because if you're a small economy, you can say, I want to be service-oriented because you have a small labor force. So if you want to be a productive economy, the next thing you have to look at is you need to look at how do I become a productive economy, how do I tap into those natural resources I have, the labor force. For you to tap into that labor force, you must have to go back and look at your educational system. Do we have the right curriculum? That we develop the right skills that will feed the industries that you want to come up in the country?
Given your concern about human capital development, which I believe is a new conversation here around the Nigerian Labour Congress, not just employment, not just labor, but human capital development. How do you assess the Nigerian development plan that we have, and what is your take on how we can actually address those human capital development?
Without having a robust base for developing your educational sector, you are wasting your time as a nation. India did it. I gave the example. It's like he stole from my books. India did the same. All the Asian tigers are doing the same. But in Nigeria, we are not doing that. Look at what is going on in the universities. The universities have been on strike. 3 of my children are at home. And nothing is happening. We are only organizing election. And all of us seated here seem not to be concerned. And nobody is doing anything. We have issued demands. Nothing has happened. When we mobilize Nigerians to the street, that is when some people will stand up and say, Nigerian Labour Congress, why are you people troubling Nigeria? But we want to correct a fundamental problem. Without developing our human resources, we are going nowhere. That is the truth.
Basically, I think we have choices to make. One of the choices is, are we going to go for technological unemployment or creative destruction? And it's a choice we need to make, because whether we like it or not, we're moving towards technological unemployment.
Professor Akpan Ekpo and Mr. Atedo Peterside speak further on the urgency of implementing the current National Development Plan irrespective of the outcome of the forthcoming 2023 general elections.
You cannot separate economics from politics. Do you know who will be in government in May next year? If you don't know, how will the businessman know? How does he know who he has confidence in? Until we resolve some of those things. Some countries, it's not so important. For some countries, it's not so important who emerges as government, because they already have a national consensus on how they operate the economy. and the do's and don'ts. For instance, in the UK, it doesn't matter who wins an election. Nobody interferes with the national health system because it has been resolved. It's a national consensus. In Nigeria, we're still at the stage where, depending on who gets in there, we get all kinds of deviations in policy and focus and emphasis and direction. So it's important that we quickly establish a national consensus and have the type of leaders who are focused, who can inspire the confidence of the investment community at home and abroad.
It appears that politics has taken over. So I wish the government can, I know it's a tough balancing, implement the new plan, because they still have about a year to go. I hope it's ongoing. Implement the essential features of that plan, and then where they continue or not, hand over to whoever is coming. Yeah? But the point is that this plan has a volume 2 or 3, which has detailed continuity. It's going to go to Parliament, to the House for approval. So if a new government comes, they cannot set it aside. They can make some changes depending on the shocks, global shocks. So my prayer is that the plan should be implemented effectively, efficiently. If properly done, it will be better for all of us. Because this is like a medium-term plan for the perspective plan of 2050. So that's our prayers.
The general manager and editor-in-chief of Vanguard Newspapers, Mr. Gbenga Defaye, believed the build-up to the decisive 2023 elections set the pace for organizing this edition, which provided a venue for a robust discussion on achieving progress in the development and implementation of National Economic Plan.
Poor coordination, poor monitoring, poor execution. That's the story of our national plan. But we think if we continue to discuss this and there is consistency, there is evaluation and monitoring, we can achieve a lot more for long-term growth and for the people of this country.
No nation has attained real inclusive development and global competitiveness without an intentional and sustainable economic development plan. The 2021 to 2025 National Development Plan provides an opportunity for the government to demonstrate the political will to execute the plan and lead Nigeria to the pathway of stability.